Morning. Monday morning, June 28th. And it's a slow morning, a tired morning. And Jim and Kathy, good to see you this morning. I am up here at in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Jeremy and Wendy, good to see you. And we are spending a week here at Redwood Christian Park Family Camp. So looking forward to this week. Barbara Richardson, good to see you this morning. Stephanie Ellis, good to see you. Janisa. But, oh man, it's a slow morning. I picked up Martha from the airport yesterday afternoon. She was supposed to come in on Saturday, but due to bad weather in the Midwest, it was delayed until 4:30 yesterday. So I picked her up then. Steve and Andrea, good morning from Pennsylvania. I also saw my mom's name go by there. Welcome to you. And so after everything yesterday and the opening day of camp and all that stuff, this morning came early. I'm just above the camp right now on a walking path. And I'll probably film from different parts of these walking trails that are all up around this camp the early morning, so I don't disturb anybody. Carmen, good to see you. Sally Crocker, good to see you. Dana, good morning. Daryl and Suzanne, up in Washington now. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying yourselves. Good to see you this morning. So my devotion this morning has to do with an audio book I was listening to yesterday as I drove to San Jose to get Martha from the airport. And the topic that the author was talking about is the importance of initiation in our life. And the purpose of initiation is to get us from one phase of our spiritual journey to another. It's kind of a growth-oriented idea. And we must pass through initiation to get to the next phase of our growth. And he was using it as a general concept. And there were three things that in this particular chapter, or a couple of chapters that I listened to, that I want to pass along. And as it pertains to what the Bible calls our sanctification, our ongoing growth to become and experience spiritual maturity. And it involves three things. One is death. Two, the second is a guide. And the third thing is community. I just want to talk about these three things. The first one is death. This is akin to the idea of initiation with which the author was alluding to. And it's the kind of things that Jesus, when Jesus meets with Nicodemus, he says, you must be born again, born a second time. This is some of this initiate type of language that means that we have to die to a first existence before we can move to the next existence. Paul writes about this when in Galatians chapter 2, and he says, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. The life which I now live, I live by faith in the one who loved me and delivered himself up for me. Galatians 2:20, I think that's the verse. This idea of I'm willing to surrender my life and to experience a death of sorts so that the new life, the spiritual rebirth, can exist in me. It requires a death. And in fact, this is what baptism, which is an initiation, a ritual, a rite of passage, if you will, of every believer that symbolizes two things. One is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. We're associating ourselves with Jesus Christ. But Paul tells us in Romans chapter 6 that it also symbolizes our own death. that we have died with Christ, we were buried with him, and now, just as he was raised from the dead, we also are raised to live a new life. So this idea of death, surrender, letting go, experiencing our limits, and embracing the new life that is in Jesus requires this painful transition. And in life, we see this. In order to get to the next phase of our personal development, we have to go through difficulty. We have to pay our dues. We have to experience painful things, and it's a part of our life experience. When you talk about someone who is fairly young and hasn't experienced a lot of things, their life has been fairly protected. They've lived in a household where their parents made sure that they had everything that they needed. They had the clothes. They didn't have to work for those things. They contribute to the household a little bit, but at that phase of our life, when we have very little exposure to pain and difficulty and death, we're not selected at that point in our life for big responsibilities, right? But someone who has lived life, who has experienced failure, difficulty, has paid their dues, who has proven themselves day in and day out, they're the ones who, when you are having a problem, when you're going through something, those are the ones you go to. We go to them because they've lived the life, they've experienced the things. And so this is why the Bible talks favorably about sacrifice, about surrender, about death, about difficult things in our life, and how we should consider it joy when we encounter them, because they're developing in us very necessary things. So the first point of growth is we have to be willing to suffer, willing to surrender our lives, experience that passageway of death unto new life. The second point that the author was making is that we need a guide. It's important to have someone who is living the next phase of life, who has experienced these things. Those voices are so helpful to us, to help us navigate those painful journeys to the next phase of our spiritual understanding, our spiritual maturity. And this is how I think Paul writes in, I believe it's Titus, when he's writing Titus, he says to encourage the older men to invest in younger men, the older women to invest in the younger women, so that they might know what's next, how to get to that next level of their own spiritual journey and their own maturity. And this is why we value, this is why the churches have elders. The point of elders, not the point, but one of the strength of the elder board in the early church is that they're likely actually also older people. They've experienced more life. They have more depth to draw from to lead the younger generation forward. And in our culture, we value that less. We think youth is where it's all at, and the energy and ambition of youth really drives a lot of things. We want to stay as young as possible, look as young as possible. It's a part of our culture. But what undercuts the value of that is that same youthfulness hasn't yet developed a sense of self-sacrifice for the sake of others. They're willing to sacrifice, but it's more for their own ego. And this is universal. I'm not picking on anybody. Everybody at our age, at our younger ages, we have to somehow allow the ego to die a little bit before we can really embrace more deep relationships with people, because other people become, we're willing to sacrifice for the sake of others, for the sake of Christ. And we don't learn that. We have to learn that through painful times. And transitioning, it's not just about us. The younger we are, it feels like the more the world is just about us. And the older we are, we recognize that it's about all of us and about Christ. and begin to shift away from our ego being the primary driver of our choices to Christ, to others. And so it's important to have these guides, those who have gone before us, to lead us in this way. And then the third thing is this exists in community. I can't learn to sacrifice myself except for my love for a greater community of people, in which the older are investing in the younger are watching the older generation and how they live their life, how they make sacrifices for the sake of community, how strength and wisdom are honored in that kind of sacrifice, in investing in others. And so then you see this whole picture taking place in the church. That's kind of the ideal of the church. You have brand new believers who are figuring out the ropes and learning. You have your younger generation coexisting with the older generation who's been around for a while, also are spiritually deeper, and those older, more mature and seasoned believers are investing in the younger generation. And this takes place in this community where everybody watches one another, everybody helps one another, everybody invests in the interests of others. This is what Paul said in Philippians chapter 2. Let us not look only to our own interests, but also to the interests of others, following the example of Christ, who humbled himself and sacrificed himself unto death, and then God raised him up and seated him in the high places where every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So Jesus himself went through this process of humiliation, death, and then exaltation. And so it's a pattern for all of us. And we do this, so we have to be willing to do this. We have to do it with guides, or we ourselves could be a guide looking for how we invest in other people. And we do this in community. And this community also, it's the picture of the church, but it also happens, we see it happen very naturally in athletic teams. I've coached for years. That's a little community where the coach, the mentor, the guide is helping younger initiates to further their journey, not just in a particular athletic pursuit, but also their own emotional maturity. As they learn to work hard, put in effort, put the team first over their own ambitions. Those kind of things are learned. We see this in a household with parents and children. It's an obvious, it's like a micro community where you learn those same things. You think about it in a business where you have a particular team that oversees a particular area of a larger business, that team working together. If you have older guides helping younger initiates in their abilities to work together as a team, to sacrifice themselves for the sake of the team, and the team working for the sake of the business to have success. You see how these pictures are just natural communities with guides and initiates, all in our life experience. This happens by God's design. And so where are we in that picture? Where are we? How do we fit in to all of that? Are we an initiate? Are we saying no to the ego and to the self and surrendering our life, often through difficulty and pressing forward through a struggle, perhaps? Are we looking for a guide? Are we a guide, turning around and looking for someone whom we can invest in and teach how to navigate life as we have experienced it and grown in our own maturity? And how are we investing in doing this in the sense of community? We can't just come to church, sit in a chair, hear a sermon, and leave. It's an investment in a family in order for this whole growth and deep affection for God and for one another can take place. So I thought those were interesting ideas that I was just stimulated by and yesterday. So I hope that's encouragement to you. And you have a good day. Stay cool. It's hopefully going to be pretty cool here up in the Santa Cruz Mountains today. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.